We're going to continue on the discussion of path to purchase and mobile, and how mobile is changing the way things do this. And we're going to, let me introduce Anneka Gupta, Chief Product Officer of LiveRamp. She's going to be leading the conversation. Anneka has been with LiveRamp since February 2016. Am I reading that right? No, it didn't sound right. All right. But she oversees execution and strategy for LiveRamp's roadmap, including marketing, recruiting, product management, and software development. And she'll be talking with Julie Bernard, Chief Marketing Officer of VerveMobile. Julie is Verve's brand strategy, marketing, analytics, and creative services lead. She was previously Senior Vice President of Omnichannel, Consumer Strategy, Data Science, and Loyalty at Macy's. So with that, ladies. And were we able to get both mics for you?
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us, Julie, for this conversation. So I wanted to start out, Julie, you are an expert in mobile. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up being the Verve CMO.
Sure. Well, I'm very happy to be here. And thanks to all of you for taking some time to listen to us today and a little bit of our story. As mentioned, I came to Verve coming out of about a 20-year career in retail. And in that capacity over the years, always in a B2C context, but always focused on both strategy of growing a business by better connecting with consumers and tapping into data assets that you could better leverage beyond just direct marketing and kind of these traditional applications that people had, but for how could you really draw insights about who consumers are and how to deepen the relationships with customers. So always around customer intelligence, consumer intelligence, and then leveraging technologies to deliver relevance and personalization and things of that nature at scale. And so have been doing that for a really long time. And through that was introduced to Verve and others in the space as I was working, frankly, it's funny, with Jennifer speaking beforehand, with dunnhumby, to do a lot of work in the data analytics space and customizing content and doing a lot of innovative things in marketing, leveraging that knowledge of who customers are so that we can deliver, as businesses, ever more relevant and meaningful, and even if I would say, magical experiences for consumers so that they respond to brands and continue to come back. So really passionate about the opportunity to tap into data so that you can do that, leveraging technology to do it at scale, and staying ahead of, of consumers and the marketplace. And mobile was just the next right step for me, to really say, in the retail capacity, both when I worked in specifically at a department store, but also with a lot of the colleagues I had in electronics and home improvement, we would love to say if we were together on stage, putting the customer at the center of all decisions. And when the mobile device is an extension of that consumer, it just makes sense to then say that there's a relationship to, if I'm putting the customer at the center of all my decisions, I therefore need to put mobile at the center of all my business decisions as well.
Great. So Verve has done some really interesting research on how Gen Z and millennials are beginning to interact with content on mobile devices. You've coined this term, mobile prodigies. Yeah. Can you talk about this term, what it means, and some of the research that you've done?
Sure. So at Verve, we've been in the mobile marketing business for 11 years. And I always find that fascinating. When I first met with our founder, Tom Kenny, and he tells the story about, if you think about knocking on the doors in this town in 2005, seeking funding for a startup that was saying, you know what, we're going to be serving location-based and location-informed advertising on mobile devices 2 years prior to the introduction of the iPhone. And so here he was knocking on the doors, seeking funding and saying, it's going to be, and you had razors, right? You had a BlackBerry, you had, beepers practically still. And, it's just kind of a really interesting evolution of what you think about with mobile and its importance over time. And now, of course, it's ubiquitous. We all know it in this room. We all know the importance that it has in our lives. And mobile is, in fact, shaping the marketing landscape in really important ways. And as an innovator in that space, it's important to us to continue to keep track of what's important from a consumer point of view. And so we commissioned research, custom research, with an LA-based agency called Wildness. They are a division of Awesomeness TV, and they are experts in youth culture and helping brands become and stay relevant to the youth of our country and globally. And we worked with them to really understand the mobile prodigies, which is a combination of the emerging Gen Z and also the younger portion of the millennials. So we broke the millennials in half, and so it's the younger element of the millennial demographic to understand their relationship with their phone and how that relationship is shaping the mobile marketing landscape. And it was really fascinating to think about some of the ways where there are differences and material differences. And this is this combination of the older Gen Z and the younger millennials, these mobile prodigies. This is the first generation, these two cohorts that have grown up with mobile in a way where they could pinch, swipe, and scroll before they could say the alphabet, before they could write their name. And in that, their experience with mobile and how it's enhancing and helping their life is really important. And so through the research, a couple of the high-level observations is that we can finally move away from mobile being the second screen that's enhancing another experience. In fact, again, I would say a lot of us know mobile is the first screen. And I would argue for our mobile prodigies, they can go for days at a time where mobile is, in fact, the only screen. They actually are very comfortable leading their entire life only on their mobile device for days at a time and not even really needing a desktop or a laptop or a tablet or any other device. So it's an important observation about our mobile prodigies. Yet when we think about what mobile really meant for them too, it was this sense of also, from a digital experience standpoint, again, this is the generation. They could swipe and pinch before they could write their name. That they really want to have participatory engagement in the experiences that they're having with content. And many of you in this room may know that video from about 4 or 5 years ago. It was a father. He took a picture of his about 18 months old, and there's the kid with a tablet, totally understands how to navigate, moving around content, continuing, then handed a magazine. And the magazine is extremely frustrating. This child is 18 months old, and the kid is poking away at the paper, trying to move the pages, didn't understand, was like confused and frustrated that he couldn't go deeper and couldn't further explore. So this sense of participating, this participatory engagement, this is that generation. They expect it from 18 months. And so they want to interact. They don't want us as brands and marketers just to be preaching to them. And the extension of that "don't preach at me" is the don't preach at me, but also let me have a discussion with you. So our mobile prodigies really emphasize the importance of creation, that they want to create content, and they want to create their own custom content. They want to create using brands content. And so it's engaging in content very differently, really attending to their spirit of curiosity and where they want to go next, and letting them be creators and experiencing brands in this kind of collaborative type of way.
Yeah, that's great. So the title of our panel is talking about the path to purchase. Yeah. So as you think about path to purchase for millennials and for these mobile prodigies, how is that path to purchase different than older generations? And how do you think this is going to change as mobile prodigies age and their spending power increases?
Yeah, well, the spending power is already pretty impressive. When we looked at various reports, depending on how you choose to source your data, the mobile prodigies already represent $250 to $650 billion in annual buying power. So they are already influencing our macroeconomy, and that's just in the US alone. The interesting thing is about the importance of mobile, though. Again, if putting the customer at the center of all our decisions, and by extension, mobile as a part of that, 60% of our mobile prodigies said they would rather lose their wallet than lose their phone. And I thought that's really interesting. For me, the idea of losing my wallet would be pretty horrible. And I think about one of the specific bits of feedback from one of our respondents brings it to life beautifully. And there were about 3,000 people. It was both qualitative and quantitative in our study. And he said, well, if I lose my wallet, I'm really only losing two things. I'm losing my driver's license and about maybe $20 in cash at most at any given point in time. So the $20 I don't care about. And the driver's license, I'll just go to the DMV and get a new one. And I thought, well, I don't know, me growing up, going to the DMV was pretty torturous. So if that is the lesser of the two evils, that's an interesting observation. And that was for 60% of our mobile prodigies. What's more important to me, though, when I think about the path to purchase that's different is if I think broadly about the industry and the narrative around omnichannel. For so many conversations for the past decade, omnichannel has been about supply chain efficiency. we talk about omnichannel customers, but no one actually has been properly studying omnichannel consumer behavior dynamics. It's really been a heavy emphasis on inventory optimization across different formats. Getting the inventory from online to a store, getting it from a store to a home, getting it from one store to another store. And there's heavy emphasis on omnichannel being this supply chain element. And again, to meet a customer's expectation, but still you're focusing on inventory optimization and pricing, having pricing be the same across channels and things like that. But there's so much richness to be had from thinking about, with our mobile prodigies, omnichannel as about how they experience brands. And the reality that digital and physical, there's just a blurring of that for them because they're doing both all the time. We live in a physical world and we're using digital to constantly enhance and augment it. And so I can be receiving on my mobile device when I wake up in the morning a text message or an email, and that reminds me to go to something. And then over lunch, I'm browsing on a tablet, and I start to save things to a cart, but I don't want to really check out on that device. I don't like checkout as much on that device. So that device needs to connect the experience back to potentially desktop, laptop. And I might check out in that context, or I might actually save and expect those products to be in a dressing room, ready for me so that I can actually go into a physical store first, touch it, feel it, try it, so I don't have to deal with returns. And when I get into the store, of course, starting to think about the importance of AR and VR and how these different capabilities over time are going to much more magically enhance that shopping experience. And so I think that for the mobile prodigies, recognizing that mobile is often that connective tissue, enhancing that entire omni-channel experience all the time, and using it in their physical locations as well is really important. And it's important for all of us as marketers and brands to really be thinking about, they have the power. They get to choose if it's in a store, if it's on a laptop, if it's on their mobile device, and really to respect and honor their choice and to be servicing them in the most seamless way across all of those different contexts.
Are there any really innovative brand experiences you've seen being created leveraging mobile to interact with this group?
I think that there's a lot of room for growth still. I think that one of the things that was really important for our mobile prodigies was the seamless, intuitive nature of things, and everything is still a little bit too hard, and our mobile prodigies express that to us. In fact, they have such a deep and informed understanding of what the world could be and the types of data that they're sharing and how it can be used for their benefit. Their bar is so high, and when we're not meeting it, they're disappointed. So they know they're sharing data. 80% of them say, I'm perfectly okay with sharing that data as long as you deliver a relevant experience back to me. And then if you don't deliver the relevant experience, it's just a loss, right? You're losing. And so it's so important because their knowledge is so high to be moving much more quickly than I think our industry as a whole is really doing today. I think we get stuck behind system development life cycles and ROI cases for the different folks in our organizations, and we just can't get out of our own way with perpetually building strategies and the tactics and having a beautiful 80-page deck to pitch what we're doing instead of just getting going. And I think it's really important for all of us to just move with much more agility and speed in how we bring these great experiences to the mobile prodigy consumer. Their expectation is that we're going to do it. We got to figure it out.
So one of the things you just mentioned was data sharing, and so mobile prodigies are obviously very tech savvy. How are they thinking about sharing their data? What kinds of privacy concerns do they have, and how is that shifting?
Yeah, so any of the conversations we would have around mobile, right, we're going to probably get into a privacy and data sharing type of a topic. I love that I work now at Verve because when I did work for Macy's, it was much more fearful for me to be speaking about how we were using data for America's department store. Now it's tech firm, so I can speak about it much more comfortably. Our mobile prodigies, I think there is this sense that the younger generations are lackadaisical about how they share their data because they've grown up in this world of sharing all the time. They live their worlds for everybody to see out on all the social networks, and it appears you would think that they don't care about the data that they're sharing. And our work did not find that to be the case at all. Now, the interesting thing is they don't quite have the paranoia that the boomers had. They don't have the suspicion, not quite paranoia, but the big brother suspicion maybe of Gen X. But the mobile prodigies, because they're so informed, absolutely have awareness of the types of data that are being shared, that they're sharing. And so with that, the quid pro quo of the relevance that they expect back. The thing is, though, they don't actually always understand why certain types of data are being captured about them because they're not seeing that benefit back. So many times, even 3 and 4 years ago, we'd go to a session like this and you'd say to people, take out your phone, go to settings, go to location services, and you could see all the different locations that you went to throughout the day, the timestamp, the addresses, and people would be shocked. The mobile prodigies, they know that already, and they are constantly going into settings, location, and tweaking that daily. They have knowledge about the types of data, and if they experience a brand, either mobile web or in-app, and it didn't deliver the relevance they expected, they just shut it off. A great example I love to use is one of the navigation apps, very popular one, and they turn off location every time they're not using it. They turn it on when they're in a car and they actually need to use it, and they turn it off, and you say, so this was a pursuit point. I'm like, so why do you turn it off? And they said, it's killing my battery. They're so disrespectful of my battery. It drains my battery within 45 minutes, and it heats up my phone. So I think it's interesting that they look, that could be true or not true in that particular example. They could have had something else open in the background they didn't know about. But it's interesting that they have this knowledge of turning it on and off. The other thing is that they're expecting us to take the location information and marry it with other behaviors on phone. And other things that they're doing on their phone so that we can infer their interests and their hobbies and other areas that might be interesting to them, bring it all together so that the advertising that's served for them is not only contextually intelligent, but actually brings them what I like to call anticipatory inspiration. That we're not just, the sense of predictive personalization, and in fact, I would argue PII is just being friendly. To say Dear Julie in a communication to me is just being polite. It's just good manners. They expect far more than that, and they want us to know them better than they know themselves because of the amount of data that they're sharing. And so while they're not lackadaisical about it, they have an expectation that we're all able to piece it all together across contexts for them. So they don't want to be known in one platform and not known in another, or only known a sliver here and a sliver here and a sliver here. They actually expect and think we're all sharing it so much so that we can figure it out across all of these experiences. And they don't even get that we're not doing that. And some of it's self-regulated. We don't even think we should be doing that. And they're like, you should, because you need to get to know me better and deliver these better experiences for me. So I think there is a comfort as long as the value proposition is there. So it's, and it's over 60% of them said they're very comfortable sharing data as long as the relevance and reward is there.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So you're saying that they're expecting that we're using their data in ways that we're not actually using it today, and they want us to be using that data even more to create better experiences.
Yeah. Another example of that was interesting, too, was the importance from a creative standpoint.
Yeah.
Look, it's a universal truth. Creative has to be appealing. It has to be non-intrusive. It has to be relevant. We say that. Yet the mobile prodigies were able to articulate a sense of, if you have all of these data about me, why can't you match the data insights you have to the creative that I get? So a very sophisticated understanding of the connectivity between the intelligence layer that we all have access to and then the type of content and creative that is served to them. And so the creative also has to be inspired and informed by the data insights that we have about these consumers across the entire experience of interaction that we can have with them. So it's just really interesting.
Yeah.
It goes well beyond the aesthetic matters, which it does more than ever. Because the other thing they say is, my gosh, you have all this information about me. You're the most data-informed, businesses ever. And then you serve me, cruddy content.
Yeah.
And so all of that data, everything, and the investments of time, people, resources, tech that we're making in informing our businesses to drive whatever our business objective result is, brand awareness, sales, whatever it might be, all of those data initiatives are for naught if at the end of the day I'd have horrible creative, delivered to me. So creative matters, and I think we need to reintroduce that a lot more, and I think we've started to see in the past 6 months the resurgence of the conversation around creative and smarter creative than what we would have even been serving and introducing to these mobile prodigies even 3 and 4 years ago.
Yeah, and what do you think is a relative importance then of the underlying data that's being used to really understand your audience versus the creative?
I think the importance of those data sets is more important than ever. I think we're going to see an interesting evolution for mobile in particular, as almost mobile becoming the nexus of identity, because it's the one constant. It's with me all the time. So in whatever context I'm living my real life, that mobile device is there and can be communicating with all of those other digital contexts. So if I think about my smart appliances and my connected car, it has to talk back to me. My car needs to connect with me. My refrigerator needs to connect with me, and it's coming back to my device. And so thinking differently about identity in our mobile world, and thinking innovatively and interestingly about how the mobile device can almost serve as that nucleus of identity across channels and across contexts and devices, is something that I think will be interesting to observe from an evolution standpoint. And pulling it together in a privacy-safe environment, of course, is really important for our mobile prodigies. And it was interesting from an app perspective. Again, they have so much knowledge about the apps that they're interacting with. They're downloading 5 to 6 a month, 1 and 2 a week, which was interesting. So, an app ecosystem that's definitely alive and vibrant. But if those apps don't deliver to them the experiences that they expect, they will just as quickly turn that off. And uninstall. And it was interesting. The mobile prodigies like to keep their phone tidy. That was one of the words that was used. They want it to be clean and organized. They have so much on it that they're constantly organizing it. And if there are apps that they're not using, they'll be as frequently as they're exploring new ones. And not only for entertainment, which is another interesting thing. We kept hearing about, it's always entertainment, it's gaming, it's different types of things. There's a lot of interest and emphasis on apps that bring them utility and functional improvement in their life. And what was interesting is, one of our respondents told a funny story, and he's like, and why do they have to be so many and they're so different? When I wake up and I look at the weather app that I have on my phone, because it tells me the weather for the day, then I have to look at my calendar to see what I have on my calendar. And then, of course, we have all these different purchases. Why can't I have one environment, this was his idea, if anyone wants to go build it, that connects the weather to my appointments that day, the context of those appointments, and knows what I have in my closet to recommend what I should wear? And he literally, dead serious, thought we could do that, and was not understanding, again, like this expectation for sophistication, why we shouldn't know exactly what he wanted to wear that day for the particular appointments he had for the context of the weather based on what he owned. And I'm like, that is so much more difficult than you can imagine. But thank you for the feedback. So it's interesting, but that's the expectation.
Yeah. Well, great. I wanted to leave a few minutes for the audience to ask some questions. So if anyone has any questions, I think you can come up to the microphones to ask Julie. Yeah.
This is great. I actually have 2 questions. So the first question, it's very interesting that it's pretty counterintuitive when nowadays you hear like there's data leak, those kind of news there. And like you talk about like the mobile prodigies, they're less concerned about that. Do you have any I know it's not exact, but like absolute percentage, they say like very concerned or somewhat concerned, that kind of numbers there. So that's the first question. And second question is, do you see any difference of the mobile prodigy in terms of data protection concerns across different continents? In a particular continent I have in mind is Europe, where they have more stricter data protections there. So do you see any difference across like the different continents in terms of their data protection concerns?
Sure. So the first piece of it, in terms of how many people had kind of the worry, that caution, was about 40% of the mobile prodigies had that sense of unease with their data sharing. But it could easily be turned around, and I intentionally use the word easily turned around if they're getting relevance. So that discomfort comes from the lack of transparency for what types of data are being captured about them and how it's being used for their benefit. When we are crystal clear about the benefit that we are bringing to them and what we're capturing and why, it reduces that sense of unease. And here's the example I like to use. One of our mobile prodigies beautifully explained her dissatisfaction with the terms and conditions of something. And she's like, God, I'm scrolling through, I agree, and it's 17 pages of font to legal text. I don't actually know what you're capturing and how you're using it for my benefit. Speak in simple terms, treat me like an adult, tell me what you're using and why, and I'm okay. A lot of our mobile prodigies could also reference in the location services parts of their phone the fact that the apps they have on their phone have enhanced the description of why location. So instead of saying, we are capturing location information so that we can better serve you, and that type of nonsense that doesn't really say anything, it says something but doesn't say anything, it would be much more specific to say so that we can bring you weekly specials for your Best Buy. You know that if you're very specific about it, they say, yep, that completely makes sense, okay. So this sense of transparency and clarity of plain, simple English explanations, this don't hide behind the attorneys, was an interesting and frankly, a very energized bit of feedback that we received from the mobile prodigies. In terms of the global piece of it, our research right now was US-based, and it's available on our website at VerveMobile.com, Mobile Prodigies. Yet we are going to be completing some work because we've just entered Europe ourselves at Verve, so we'll be doing the UK, Germany, and France next, and then extending to other countries. So probably in the January, February timeframe, so you can take a look then.
Great,
so
thank
that
you.
it's more of a data-informed answer. We have some hypotheses based on the early qual work we've done, but I'd rather the quantitative pieces come back before I'd say. You're welcome. Thank you.
Probably time for one more question. Anyone? Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. You know, for your mobile prodigy, I had the solution. They just have to go back to 1980 when there were blue suits, gray suits, white shirts, blue shirts.
Exactly.
They say you wore the same uniform no matter what the weather was, whatever the time
they're much
was.
more interesting now.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to take a short break. We're going to ask that you come back here at 2:15, and we're going to continue with the conversation. We're going to bring both the rooms together and regroup. So thank you.